In the early 1800s, long before electricity, cameras, or paranormal investigators, the Bell family settled on a quiet stretch of farmland near the Red River in Tennessee. The land looked harmless, fertile soil, tall trees swaying in the wind, and an almost unnatural silence at night. Locals had warned John Bell in vague ways, never directly, only hinting that the land carried a memory. John dismissed it as superstition. He was a practical man, respected in the community, and believed fear came from ignorance. That belief would cost him his life. The first strange event occurred one evening when John noticed something moving at the edge of his cornfield. At first glance, it looked like a dog, but as it stepped forward, its shape became wrong, its body unnaturally stretched, its eyes reflecting light in a way no animals should. When John raised his rifle and fired, the creature vanished instantly, leaving no sound, no tracks, and no explanation. That night, the Bell house fell into a silence so deep it felt heavy, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Weeks later, the sounds began. At first, they were faint scratching inside the walls, soft knocking on doors, tapping at windows in the dead of night. The family searched for rats, for intruders, for anything logical, but found nothing. Then the noises grew louder and more violent. Chains dragged across the floors. Beds shook violently, as if something unseen was testing their strength. Wooden bedposts showed bite marks, as though teeth had scraped against them. Each night, fear settled deeper into the house, thick and suffocating. The children were the first to be touched. Betsy Bell would wake up screaming, as invisible hands yanked her hair or slapped her face with enough force to leave marks. She was pinched until dark bruises appeared on her skin. Witnesses watched in horror as she was lifted off the ground by nothing at all. The attacks were deliberate, cruel, and intelligent. Strangely, John Bell himself remained untouched, as if whatever haunted the house was watching him closely, waiting. One night, as the family prayed aloud for protection, a voice answered them. It was a woman's voice, clear, calm, and mocking. It spoke from the darkness of the room without a body, without breath. It knew their names. It knew secrets spoken only in whispers. It quoted scripture, then laughed at it. The voice claimed it was a spirit that had lived on the land long before the Bells arrived and would remain long after they were gone. It called itself Kate, and it made one thing very clear: hated John Bell. From that point on, the entity no longer hid its intentions. It focused its attention on Betsy, terrorizing her daily, and openly threatened John. Soon, John Bell began to fall ill. His face partially paralyzed, his speech slurred, and his strength faded rapidly. Doctors examined him, but found nothing physically wrong. At night, the voice would taunt him, mocking his weakness, promising what was to come. It said plainly, without hesitation, that it intended to kill him. One morning, John Bell failed to wake up. Beside his bed sat a small vial of dark liquid that no one recognized. The voice laughed and claimed responsibility, saying it had given him a dose while he slept. To test the liquid, the family gave a drop to a cat. The animal died almost instantly. Soon after, John Bell passed away. There was no arrest, no trial, no human suspect. History recorded it as something else entirely. To this day, it remains the only documented case in American history where a paranormal entity is blamed for a human death. Word of the haunting spread rapidly, drawing hundreds of visitors, skeptics, and witnesses. Even Andrew Jackson, who would later become President of the United States, traveled to the Bell property. According to multiple accounts, Jackson's men were attacked by an invisible force, one of them pinned to the ground as if by unseen hands. Jackson reportedly said he would rather fight the British again and face whatever lived on that land. Eventually, the entity announced it was leaving, but not forever. It promised to return after 7 years. True to its word, strange activity resumed exactly 7 years later. Even today, the area near the Bell Witch Cave is considered cursed. Visitors report being shoved, hearing voices whisper their names, feeling watched in complete darkness, and discovering scratches on their bodies with no explanation. Some refuse to enter the cave at all. Others leave trembling, unable or unwilling to describe what they experienced. The Bell Witch was not a shadow, not a fleeting glimpse, not a misunderstood sound in the night. It spoke, chose its victims, controlled outcomes, and killed. It was witnessed by entire communities and recorded in history. If spirits exist, if something intelligent and cruel can attach itself to land, then the Bell Witch was never haunting a house. It claimed it, and many believe it never truly left. As the weeks passed, the land itself seemed to change its behavior around the Bell home. The air grew heavier at night, pressing against the chest, making sleep feel unnatural. Crickets and frogs that once filled the darkness with sound went silent after sunset, as if instinctively avoiding something unseen. John Bell noticed that even their animals refused to approach certain areas of the property. Horses reared and pulled away violently. Dogs whimpered and hid beneath the house, and livestock would freeze in place, staring into empty fields as though watching something move just beyond human sight. Inside the house, the disturbances became more calculated. Objects no longer fell randomly. They moved with purpose. A chair would slide slowly across the floor while the family watched, stopping precisely in front of a doorway. Blankets were pulled off sleeping children with deliberate force, not in sudden jerks, but in steady, controlled motions, as if guided by hands that understood restraint. Doors opened silently and closed with careful precision, avoiding noise, as though the entity wanted the family awake and aware rather than startled. The voice returned more frequently, and its intelligence became impossible to deny. It held conversations, interrupted prayers, corrected Bible verses, and laughed when the family attempted to sing hymns. When neighbors visited, the entity behaved differently, mocking some while remaining completely silent around others. It seemed to evaluate people, studying them. Those who ridiculed the haunting were often the ones who later fled the house pale and shaking, claiming they felt fingers pressing into their throats or breath against their ears, though no one stood nearby. Betsy's suffering deepened as the entity's focus narrowed. At times, she would be dragged from her bed and thrown against the wall. Other times, she felt hands wrapping around her arms, holding her down while something whispered threats inches from her face. She described the sensation as being examined rather than attacked, as if the presence was learning how much pain she could endure. Her fear was no longer panic, but exhaustion, the kind that comes from knowing sleep offers no escape. John Bell's decline accelerated in unnatural ways. He complained of an overwhelming pressure in his head, as though something was squeezing his thoughts, slowing them down. At night, he reported feeling watched even with his eyes closed. The voice spoke directly to him now, describing his weakness in detail, predicting each symptom before it appeared. It told him when he would fall, when he would choke, when his body would no longer obey him. Every prediction came true. The entity began manipulating time inside the house. Family members would swear hours had passed when only minutes had gone by, or vice versa. Candles burned down far faster than normal. Footsteps echoed through rooms long after everyone stood still. Visitors claimed they felt disoriented, unable to tell which direction they had entered from, even in familiar spaces. Some reported hearing their own names spoken softly from behind, only to find no one there. When John Bell was finally confined to his bed, the voice grew crueler. It spoke openly in front of witnesses, announcing its intentions without hesitation. It described the poison it planned to use before it appeared. When the vial was discovered, no one could explain how it had entered a locked room. After John's death, the voice celebrated openly, mocking the grieving family, reminding them it had kept its promise. Even after the funeral, the disturbances did not stop. The entity lingered, as though enjoying the aftermath. It followed Betsy outside the home, whispering to her near the river, in the fields, even at church. It controlled her future by instilling terror so deep that she abandoned her engagement, claiming the spirit threatened to kill any man who married her. The entity had not only invaded their home, it had reshaped their lives. When the voice finally announced its departure, it did so theatrically, predicting future events and naming dates. Its promise to return after 7 years was not a threat spoken in anger, but a calm statement of fact. True to its word, strange occurrences resumed years later, though less violent, as if the entity was reminding the land and the people that it still existed. To this day, the area surrounding the Bell Witch Cave carries a reputation that persists across generations. Visitors report overwhelming dread without explanation, sudden nausea, unexplained scratches, and a sensation of being touched by cold, deliberate hands. Some hear whispers that respond when spoken to. Others feel sudden rage or despair that disappears once they leave the land. Locals say the entity feeds on attention, that acknowledging it gives it strength. The Bell Witch case remains unmatched in American paranormal history, not because of how frightening it was, but because of how intentional it seemed. This was not chaos. It was control. Whatever lived on that land understood fear, suffering, and human weakness, and used them with precision. And many who have walked that land believe it is still waiting now, patient and unseen, watching anyone who dares to listen too closely in the dark. After the Bell Witch announced its departure, the family hoped the nightmare had finally ended, but peace never truly returned to the land. The house felt altered, as though something invisible had stained it permanently. Even during calm days, an unnatural tension lingered in the air. Visitors described the sensation of stepping into the home as crossing an unseen boundary, where thoughts felt heavier and emotions sharper. Laughter sounded wrong inside the house, echoing too long, as if something else was listening and learning the sound. Years later, when the entity returned as promised, it did not reveal itself immediately. Instead, it observed in silence. The Bells noticed small changes, first objects subtly repositioned, doors left ajar when no one had passed through, and the feeling of being followed from room to room. The voice remained quiet for months, which frightened the family more than its presence ever had. Silence, they realized, meant intention. When the voice finally spoke again, it was softer than before, calmer, almost patient. It no longer needed to prove its power. It spoke as if resuming an old conversation, reminding the family that time meant nothing to it. It referenced events from years earlier with exact precision, recalling details no living person remembered clearly. The entity was not reliving the past, it was continuing it. The haunting began to extend beyond the Bell household. Neighbors reported strange dreams after visiting the property, dreams of standing in fields unable to move while something circled just outside their vision. Some woke with scratches they could not explain. Others reported sudden violent thoughts that disappeared as abruptly as they arrived. A few claimed to hear a woman humming late at night near the river, though no one was ever found. Children who played near the property began avoiding it without explanation. They said the land felt angry. Adults dismissed these claims, but animals confirmed them. Horses refused to cross certain paths. Dogs would growl at empty air and then flee. Birds avoided the trees closest to the house, leaving branches unnaturally bare, even in spring. Nature itself seemed aware of a presence humans struggled to define. The Bell Witch's intelligence became clearer through its manipulation of fear rather than force. Instead of attacking physically, it began planting ideas. Family members experienced intrusive thoughts that did not feel like their own visions of accidents. Sudden urges to scream, impulses to run into the woods at night. These thoughts vanished the moment they left the property, suggesting the land itself was the source. Those who studied the case years later noticed a disturbing pattern. The entity appeared strongest when acknowledged, but never satisfied. Attention fed it, yet silence never starved it. It behaved less like a ghost and more like something rooted, ancient, and territorial. Some theorized it was not a spirit of the dead, but a consciousness tied to the land itself, awakened by settlement and angered by intrusion. As decades passed, stories of the Bell Witch blurred into folklore, but the experiences did not stop. Explorers entering the Bell Witch Cave reported overwhelming dread the moment they stepped inside. Flashlights failed without explanation. Voices echoed back distorted, sometimes answering questions that had not been spoken aloud. People felt pressure on their chests, fingers brushing their necks, and a presence standing just behind them in the dark. One explorer claimed he heard his name whispered clearly, spoken in the same calm female voice described in historical accounts. Another ran from the cave, convinced something had followed him out, watching from the tree line until he left the area entirely. Skeptics who entered confidently often left shaken, refusing interviews afterward. What makes the Bell Witch uniquely terrifying is not violence alone, but continuity. The entity did not fade with time. It adapted. It observed new generations, new technologies, new disbelief, and remained unaffected. It did not seek worship or fear in dramatic displays. It waited for proximity. It reacted when people stayed too long, listened too closely, or mocked too openly. The land around the Bell Witch Cave remains quiet in an unnatural way. Locals avoid speaking about it after dark. Some refuse to say the entity's name aloud, believing recognition is an invitation. The silence there feels intentional, as though the land itself has learned when to remain still. If the Bell Witch were merely a story, it would have ended long ago. But the consistency of reports across centuries suggests something else, entirely something patient, intelligent, and deeply embedded in place. It does not chase. It does not scream. It waits. And perhaps that is the most disturbing truth of all. The Bell Witch never needed to leave. It only needed time. And that is where the story truly ends. Or perhaps it never ends at all. The Bell Witch did not vanish with fire, prayer, or sunlight. It left no mark of departure, no final scream, no dramatic farewell. Instead, it remained silent, patient, and aware. Time itself seemed irrelevant to it. The farmhouse fell to ruin. The Bell family passed into history. Yet the land continued to breathe with something unseen, something watching. Even today, the air near the Bell Witch Cave carries a weight unlike any other. Visitors speak of a silence so thick it presses on the chest, an absence of sound that makes the smallest whisper echo like a shout. Trees sway even when the wind is still. Shadows gather in impossible corners. Some swear they have seen movement out of the corner of their eyes, just beyond perception figures standing motionless, waiting, watching, calculating. And then the whispers begin. Not words, exactly, but fragments. A name called softly. A warning. A threat. Do not stay. Go now. The voice seems to come from inside and outside at the same time, wrapping around the listener like a cold fog. Those brave or foolish enough to enter report that the longer they stay, the more the voice learns them, speaking secrets no one else could know, revealing weaknesses they didn't even realize they had. It toys with the mind first, testing patience, planting terror, savoring each shiver and heartbeat. The thrill is in its patience. Unlike ordinary hauntings, this entity does not rely on sudden shock. There is no loud bang, no violent crash to mark its presence. It waits. It observes. It manipulates the environment's subtly floorboards that creak when no one walks, doors that close just as you pass, chairs that move, objects that vanish only to reappear in impossible places. Every detail is deliberate, every moment calculated to unsettle, to make the visitor question reality itself. Even natural phenomena, seem to bend to its will. Fog thickens unnaturally in the fields. Mist clings to the river in shapes that resemble faces or hands. Animals act strangely. Dogs bark at empty corners. Horses refuse to cross certain paths. Birds avoid the area entirely. Those who approach the land feel compelled to leave, as if instinct itself screams. Danger unseen, a presence ancient and intelligent. Some who have dared to explore the cave report a sensation of being followed, even when alone. Every step echoes like footsteps behind them. Every glance over the shoulder meets only darkness, yet they feel eyes boring into their back. Whispers rise and fall, seeming to answer questions they haven't spoken. Some have tried recording these sounds, but playback offers only distorted murmurs, hints of words, and something deeper, more terrible, an awareness that cannot be captured, only felt. And the thrill does not end. The Bell Witch does not tire. It does not need rest. It feeds on attention, on fear, on the acknowledgement that humans give it simply by being there. Skeptics are quickly humbled. Those who mock are shown visions so personal, so precise, they cannot explain them away. Even centuries later, the land remembers. It knows who dares to approach. It knows who fears, who laughs, who prays, and who flees. Perhaps the Bell Witch was never a ghost in the way we understand spirits. Perhaps it was something older, something bound to the land itself. A consciousness that is patient, calculating, eternal. Something that does not attack unless provoked, but provocation is not necessary. Its existence alone is a threat, an invisible force shaping reality, warping perception, bending time and space in small, terrifying ways. And the most horrifying truth is this: the land still exists. The cave still stands. The farmhouse ruins still linger in shadow. Whoever or whatever claimed that property has never left. It waits. It watches. It knows the living, and perhaps even those who dare to read its story from afar. It has survived centuries of disbelief, ridicule, and curiosity, and it will endure long after we are gone. The scariest part is not what it did to the Bell family. The scariest part is that it can do it to anyone, that it can wait. For centuries. Patient, silent, intelligent. Waiting for the right moment, for the right fear, for the next visitor to unknowingly step across the line into its domain. So if you ever find yourself near the Red River in Tennessee, and the wind grows unnaturally cold, and the forest grows quiet, and shadows seem deeper than darkness should allow, remember this: the Bell Witch is still there, waiting, watching, listening, and perhaps, just perhaps, it already knows your name. And if you survived this story, if your heart still beats and your mind hasn't wandered into the shadows, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because there are more places where the darkness waits, more stories that watch, listen, and never forget. Hit that subscribe button and the bell so you won't miss the next terrifying true horror story from the USA. Remember, some things are always watching, and now, so are we.